Hello, hello. I'm here with a good buddy of mine, Ben Jackson, who is a drummer, producer, mixer. He builds things, makes things. Ableton master. What did you have on your Facebook page? Ableton. You say you're an enthusiast, but you don't particularly care for it.
Yeah, it was almost like a wrangler for a while.
Yeah. Ben is probably, and I'm not joking. He's probably the hardest working person I know on this planet, specifically in the music industry. He is, if there's somebody that knows the term hustle and how to make things work, this gentleman here is that guy. And I think that I want to dive into what drives that for him for sure. I think we talked about it a little bit.
All right.
But I want to talk about that some more. But let's. So I want to see. So you grew up in Georgia.
Yeah.
And drumming is something that you did in North Texas. We were there near the end of it together.
Yeah, like I just got there when you were just about to leave. I think.
And then you've been here. We've been here pretty much the same amount of time. Right?
Just about. Yeah, I just got 10 years.
10 years. Yeah. Cool. I think I might be a little over 10, but I'm also terrible with time.
Yeah.
But I don't remember a time when you and I were not here at the same time. So maybe.
Yeah. I feel like either you got here right before I did, or vice versa. But it was within a few months of each other.
We've seen a little bit of a change.
Yeah, one could say that it's changed a little bit. We're also kind of part of that change.
We are part
too.
Of,
so
that's a beautiful way of looking at it.
We all spend a lot of time complaining about the drastically changing scene when we are definitely part of the problem.
Yes, or the solution.
Yeah,
I mean, I think it's changed. It's obviously changed musically for the better. I mean, and both of us. You're in the country world more than I am now, but I think it's opened up. What was it? What was the big thing when we were first here? It was what's the band? Lee. I'm blanking on it. They had the big rock hit, and everybody was like, "Oh my God, Nashville's
the Kings of Leon."
Kings of Leon.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
It's like, "Oh my God, Nashville's not country anymore."
Yeah,
it's like,
it's okay. There's a rock band now.
Yeah, there's a rock band.
Yeah.
And that opens the door for everybody else.
Yeah. So maybe it's their fault.
Let's blame Kings for the traffic.
Yeah.
We'll blame Kings of Leon for the traffic.
Yeah.
Perfect. I did a gig the other day, or a couple of days ago, at an award ceremony with all of the people that built certain parts of Nashville, like the CMT Hall of Fame, and several of the people are currently, and the new governor was there and gave a speech or whatever. But there was a table of all the people that are responsible for the traffic and the development of where streets and everything go in Nashville.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And I wanted to literally go and sit down next to them and just like have a conversation and ask them like, how is this going to get solved? You know?
Yeah, no, that would be interesting. I do think they've actually, some of that's been handled pretty well though, like all the convention center stuff and the big roundabout on 8th and like that could have been
totally
a disaster, and some of it's actually worked out pretty well. I think we're just growing faster than we have the capacity to deal with right now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, it's a good thing. I mean, it's good for the city to have all these people moving here for sure.
Right.
So, and on that note too, it's really nice that you're doing more production in the pop world, and you're getting a lot of people that are coming here because Nashville is the cool place to do your stuff.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's been a beautiful thing for a lot of us. We do a lot more remote recording, stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like there's no rules anymore, like the town has opened up musically, and the way to do a project has completely opened up, and it's all sort of legitimate. I mean, we've had home recording since the 90s, but it wasn't legitimate, like it wasn't accepted in the pro world until, a handful of years ago. And now it's like the new clients I get, some of them, it has never occurred to them that they might go to a commercial studio because they've come up in a generation now of kids that grew up with GarageBand. And so like that's their default for making a record is to just piecemeal overdub stuff together, And so I like all of it. I think it's great to be able to do different things and the openness of sort of where we're at, and people come here, I think, because it's an industry town, right? Like it's
true, yeah.
It's not so much.
Austin tried to be Nashville 10 years ago, and it kind of hit that wall, right?
Yeah, I think without like that's still the huge advantage of here and LA, and I guess not so much New York anymore because there's not a lot of industry there anymore, but or what's there I'm not very familiar with maybe, but there's such an industry hub here, so if you're seriously trying to like make it, whatever that means, and you want to expand into a bigger market than just what you can do by yourself as an artist. Nashville's still got an industry presence. There's an opportunity there, whereas Austin doesn't really have an industry presence. It just has a lot of musicians and music venues and fans, but it's hard to, I think, maybe convert in Austin compared to Nashville. But they're very different cities, even though they get compared a lot.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I mean, I love Austin too. Austin's a great place. Jeez, Austin's a beautiful place. It's like this beautiful mecca inside of. Anyway,
yeah.
Let's talk about the home recording idea, because I think that's something that is foreign to probably a lot of people that don't know Nashville all that well. And right. I know that there's people that listen to this that are in different countries that probably have little home recording rigs and do that. And I think it's really good. The thing about you that's different, and I think myself to a certain extent, because I think we are putting out pretty good things in our little studios that we've built. And yours is bigger than mine because you're a drummer, so you have to have more space, and you spend probably thousands of dollars more on plugins than I do.
We won't talk about it. My wife might listen to this.
Thankfully, I just play saxophone. So,
by the way, everybody, that's the first time in history anybody's ever said, "Thankfully, I just play saxophone."
Maybe the last. But the idea that Nashville has become this thing where you don't go to a place like Blackbird or Sound Emporium or Ocean Way because you can't. It's just not in the budget, you know. And a lot of those places have been bought up by universities anyway. Even Blackbird has turned into one because they have to.
Right.
And the idea that was Sound Emporium owned by Lipscomb? Have they bought it?
I don't know.
Okay.
I was there last week, and it seemed like it was business as usual. So I don't know. Yeah,
because I know Curb owns the Ocean Way now, right?
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, sidetrack. But the idea that there are so many home studios, but I think Nashville has kind of upped the game as far as that's concerned, as far as the quality of the home studio.
Sure.
And when you started building yours, I mean, you have a beautiful home studio, and every time you have an amazing mind for what you want something to be and what you want something to look like and what you want something to sound like. And you have the capacity that is rare amongst musicians to have in your brain, in your hands, to build and to build something to make it sound the way you want it to sound. And I know that from the day one. I mean, your dad was an electrical engineer, is that right?
Yeah.
So you know the intricacies of an outboard piece of gear to get a certain sound.
Enough to be dangerous. But
Hey, stuff in my studios because you were being dangerous.
Yeah.
The idea that what do you see the future? Do you see the future as a bunch of these home studios that are just creating these great things, and then the new move is going to be we're all going to do things from different places remotely and make something from now on?
Right.
I mean, how do you feel?
Man, I don't know. I think the future prediction thing is hard because we're never right.
Clip it.
But yeah, but I think I think the way I've kind of come to view studios in general is it's the facility should fit the project's needs, and so and like people and their skill sets, you have a range of things that you can do. The studio and the facility has the same. It might be great. Like my room is great for anything from a tiny project all the way up to we can overdub a live band. It's got enough space, but there's limitations, right? Like I don't have the ability to cut grand piano and drums at the same time because it's right there, and keep them isolated.
House.
It's my house.
Upstairs in your house. Yeah.
And so, I don't know. I think in this city, the biggest challenge for commercial studios is going to be pulling in enough money and having enough value to their community to justify the price of the real estate they're sitting on. The value of the real estate they're sitting on. That's what we see a lot, right?
Yeah,
right now, as all of our buddies.
You had a meeting in Music Row this morning.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. What's left of it?
What's left of it? Yeah.
And so I think there's going to be more stuff like this as the quality goes up. And, I wonder if we're going to see more of like a happy medium where, we might not see so many like, 7-figure, 8-figure, big giant rooms with everything in them, but we see a lot of like 1,000-square-foot studios with a tracking space, an ISO booth, and a control room where you can cut a live band and you can put it on, somebody's backyard, which is what I want to do in my next house. It's like just build a thing where I can do what I need to, and then if I want a different feel or a different space or different sound, I still live in Nashville. There's options, But I think the home studio thing opens up a lot of possibilities for a lot of people. It lets a lot more music get created, and it really allows people in the modern industry where, sales are where they are, so budgets are where they are, to still have time to like drill down and create something cool instead of feeling like, we're in this studio and we blew our whole budget on this massive room, so we've got, one day to get 10 songs done, and whatever we get is what we get,
Which still happens on a regular basis.
Yeah, and I'm a part of those sessions sometimes, and and it's it's got its advantages to put people in the live room and do the thing, but to my producer mind, I like to have a little bit more freedom to experiment, to try some stuff that doesn't work, and to have time to go back and do it instead of play it super safe because we have, we're on the clock kind of deal. So I didn't really answer your question, but that's...
No, I agree. I mean, I think that's probably going to be... That's a great way of looking at it. I mean, I trust your opinion because you are one of those people that is looking to what's your next. You are a chess player when it comes to this. Like, what's your next move?
Yeah.
And I think that you're right. I mean, the ones that my favorite sessions that I do are the ones that are the 1,000-square-foot studio.
Sure. That
you're walking in and there's like the drummer was just there yesterday, and you're sitting next to it as a horn player doing overdubs. I mean, obviously we would all like to do it down together.
Sure.
Which down in Muscle Shoals, I did one there, and it was like that. But even though everybody was cutting together and it was insanely awesome, the horns were still in a separate room.
I was gonna say, a new building, or we
were in Studio B.
Yeah.
So the Swampers were all in Studio A,
right?
With Steve and Tyler, and we're hearing it in our ears, which is great.
Yeah.
And it makes it elevate. I mean, when you're listening to him sing live, it elevates you.
Sure, you can react to it a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you're not seeing it. It feels like an overdub.
Yeah.
And then ironically enough, everything that we played while it was going down live was wiped away, and we overdubbed at the end of the night anyway.
And that's the secret of how the sausage is made so much of the time, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because they weren't focusing on what we were doing. They didn't care.
Right.
I mean, they cared, and we added an energy to it, which probably influenced maybe the piano player. Like, who knows?
Yeah.
But later it was like, okay, now let's look at the horn parts.
And that's like the you hear it a lot out of the older generations of session players about the lost mojo of having people in the room, and it's a real thing. When I do live sessions, it's there's definitely a because then there's a collaboration that happens, and some of it's verbal, and some of it's just using your ears reactionary, that you don't get, overdubbing things one piece at a time, but they're just different ways, and that's why I feel like the music itself and the type of artist that you're working with is a better, if you can take the budget out of it, which we usually can't, but if you can take the budget out of it for a second, like, it's better to make that decision based on what kind of music is this, what's this supposed to sound like at the end, and then choose your process based on the end that you're aiming towards, and
that's how your mind is working. You're looking at it that way.
Yeah, that's how I've decided to do it. And I think some of that is because I don't try to exist in just like a small genre or even a single genre at all. I kind of have a lot of wide tastes, and my curiosity gets the better of me in all those things. I mean, it'd probably be a much smarter business move if I just like drilled down and I'm this guy and this is what I do, but I can't, because I like, I like going and playing live Americana singer-songwriter sessions, but I also really like my analog synths. And so,
Is it a boredom thing? Is it like just wanting to dabble?
It's like a fascination thing. It's really like the last couple of years, especially, I've kind of opened up what I feel like might be like one of the more inner things in the Russian egg, of sort of my like discovery of music and what it means to me. And it's like, man, I just love this. Like, so I kind of I want to know how to do everything, which is why I do all the different crap that I do.
Yeah.
It's really just driven by like just a curiosity and I've heard you talk about it on here before that like you can't tell me I can't do that.
Yeah.
You know, which you wisely decry is not a great motivator.
Well, it can be at times.
As long as you're aware of it and you're under control.
It can get the train started.
Yeah, it can also get you in trouble.
It can get you in trouble.
But it's but yeah, I mean, so because I like to make a lot of different records and different kinds of records, everything for me, like the studio that I built, all the gear that I've learned how to solder together, all of it is just about the reason I like recording instead of, prefer that over the live thing is because I love records and I'm always fascinated and I always have been with how do I get something to sound like that? Like that is such a cool sound or that's such a cool part or that's such a cool combination. How did they do that? How can I do that? Like, I actually don't really care how they did it. I want to be able to do it, Yeah. But that's how you find out how to do it is to figure out how they did. And so that's kind of led me to that process of what's your music like? What do you want the end result to feel like and to be like? And what's the best process within my range? Because I have my limits, like anybody else, that I think is going to get us that result, or is what you want to do so far out of my range that I should pass you on to somebody else, But that doesn't happen a ton because most of the time, if I'm talking to them, they're already somewhat familiar with what. Yeah. But that's kind of, but you do get the other thing where it's like, well, we want to do a record that sounds like, a Zeppelin record and everybody in the room together, but we want to do it in your home studio. And it's like, well, we can't.
Yeah.
I can't. So my favorite saying this year has become, and I'm using it on everybody. This is great. I can't give you what you need if I have to do everything you say.
I love that.
Because there's like a trust factor in production. There's a trust factor in everything we do. When you're playing horns for somebody, it's the same deal. It's like, hey man, I really want this to, to feel like a Steely Dan track, and then they go, yeah man, but can you play this line and play this? Well, that line is what's making it not sound like a. Mm-hmm. So I can't give you what you're asking for if I have to do everything you say, And so I find that that process is informed by what their end result is, and then the next step is usually me making sure we can get on the same page with what that's going to be. But that's where the studio stuff came from too, because I wanted to figure out how to get great drum sounds, and then it was like, well, I've got all this stuff. How do you get great guitar sounds? How do you get great vocal sounds? And what does this gear do? And how do you, and then everything else is just a product of necessity. Like my gear tinkering, that I did for a little while, my dad showed me just enough to not electrocute myself and, and to kind of work on some stuff. But if it's like a major problem with it, I still have to send it off. I don't really know how to troubleshoot electronics very well. But I built some preamps and some compressors because I needed them and I did not have the funds to pay for and it was like, well, I want it and I want it to be good stuff, and that was the that was the move, okay, I can get it and this is what I have to do to achieve that. So okay, where's the soldering iron?
I think that's the greatest strength in a hustler mentality, and I've talked about that thing in the way that I looked at it when I've talked about it on here before, where my first record cost $9,000. And that was in 2003. And it's cool. It's hard to find. It was a process. It needed to happen. But I sat there and intently was watching every element of that process and looking at how it went from A to B to B to C to C to D, from the tracking to the overdubs to the mixing to the mastering. I was a part of all of it, and I looked at it all and I said, okay, my next record's not going to cost $9,000 because I'm going to learn how to do this, and this. And the same thing happened when I asked back at that same time. I'm like, well, what do you do when you make a record? Well, you need a website. So I went to a website of a guy I really liked. It was a really awesome website. And I went to the company and I said, hey, can you make me one of those? And they said, yeah, it'll be $22,000. I was like, fuck that.
Yeah.
I'm going to learn how to do this myself.
Right. Cool. I got a better idea. I'm just going to look at
I
yours.
taught myself web design. So now you sit there and you learn CSS, you learn HTML, and that turns itself into, and this is why I wanted to get into the hustling thing. That turns itself into, now I'm sitting in New York City, And my grant money's running out and I'm broke as heck. And I'm like, well, what do I do? Well, I have this new skill that I've developed for myself and now I can make money with it. So now I'm doing web design on the side.
Yeah.
And I think that is in itself one of the biggest things about a hustler mentality. It's kind of like you have your plan and you have your goal and you're just gaining skills along the way. And sometimes those skills need to turn into monetary situations that help you get to your goal.
Yeah.
And I think yourself and myself, we are in a place now where, and I want to talk about this too, because I saw a big change in you like last year with this kind of thing, like where we can start saying the word no and we're not hustling as much,
right?
you know?
Yeah.
And I think that getting to that place is a beautiful place, but it also means that you're at a place with a bunch of tools in your toolbox, which we've talked about a lot before too. But you, as an example, like when you're married, you have a beautiful, awesome wife, you have a house, 2 dogs, it's like you've got things to take care of, and you taught yourself how to build these pieces of gear. And I come to you and I say, hey Ben, like, dude, I just built a studio too. I need help with that, and I throw you money to help you. You help me because it costs me half of what it should cost.
Right.
We're helping each other, but you're using your skills to help yourself now buy more gear.
Right.
And all it is an investment in ourselves and an investment in time, but we don't lose sight of that end goal. And I think the thing that I've always wondered about you that I've never asked you in person, and now we're doing it in front of microphones, and I got a little bit of it, is I think when you're a hustler, you do so many different things that people don't really know what it is that you love about what you do.
Yeah.
I think that the more you hustle and the little further you get in career, the more that becomes clear. But I've always wondered with you, you've just talked a little bit about how it drives you that you want to chase a sound.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you're rewind yourself 7 years ago when you were building things, when you're getting your Ableton thing up and running, which I know you don't love to do, but it was a great thing to make money at the time.
Yeah.
And you're helping people and
Totally.
It's fine. What was it that you were chasing at that time, and has that changed over the last times you've been in Nashville? Like, have you always had kind of like this clarity of what you want in the end something to be?
No, I wish I did, man. I hear, I listen to a lot of podcasts and read a lot, and some people do, some people know from the time they're 15. It's like, I'm going to do this, and they go.
Well, if somebody wants to be an artist and a singer-songwriter, it's clear, like that's what you want.
Sure, yeah.
But for us as side musicians, the majority of the time, what do we want?
Maybe that's part of it for sure, man. Yeah. Like maybe it's just sort of the nature of where we exist in the mix of stuff. But no, I've always been fascinated with the recording element of stuff. Before I knew what a session player was or studio musician was, I just liked recording stuff. Mm-hmm. But it never, like as a kid, it did not click at all that's like, hey, dummy, like that's a thing, you should do that, It was totally separate from music because, I mean, frankly, I probably would not have chosen to go at 18 years old to North Texas if I knew that this is what I wanted to do, because they didn't have any recording program.
That's a good point, man.
They
definitely did not.
No. And so, and I'm glad that worked out that way for me, because I needed what I got out of there really badly I was able to teach myself the rest of it or learn it from people around here,
Which is probably the best way to do it, because every school that teaches it is already 2 years behind.
Yeah, that there's a lot of, I'm not going to dog any programs because I've never been through a recording program.
It's a good point.
But I can say from experience.
But we have worked with people that are in those programs.
We've worked with them, and some are better than others. But what I will say is it's not going to fix anything. It's just a safe place to do the work.
Yeah.
But you're paying a lot of money for that safe place. And I did the same work out not in the safe place, and I still got the same result. In fact, sometimes I think I got a better one, mostly because I was working with people in the scene. I wasn't insulated in an environment of only other engineers. It was like,
or engineers recording students, like you're recording professionals.
Yeah, once in a while, like I'll use some of those guys when they come recommended to do like some assisting work or editing or whatever, And I do get I don't ever get like mean looks, but I'll get confused looks sometimes where it's like, well, so you're a drummer, producer, but you've got but I'm an engineer, and you're getting all the call. You're getting called to do the job that I wanted to do. Why is that? It's because I'm doing it, and you're studying how to do it.
Well, that's an easy way for a student to fail right there.
You know, and so it's like, well, you know, I mean, you're in school. How many of your buddies how many musicians do you know? Mm-hmm. How many friends do you have that play? And how many of them are you offering to record so you can get experience right now? There's your answer. Like,
well, it's an entitlement thing, unfortunately, that's existing.
Yeah, or sometimes it's just a not getting it yet thing. But
that's a beautiful way of looking at it, Ben.
I'm not that nice about it, man. Not really. My whole, like, I talk about the get it factor a lot with other people, and it's sort of...
Dude, you have that in spades. Like, yeah. I've seen that from day one. Well, you are at go and get it and make it happen for yourself. Yeah,
and get it in, like, the... like, do you get it, or are you somebody that doesn't quite get it? Mm-hmm. You know, and there's probably a better way to say that, but that's how I've always compartmentalized it, because as you do, like, and I promise to get back to your question because it's a little related, which is as your network of people grows, your friend group and everything else, the people that you know and the people that approach you or that you approach, you have to vet. You have to sort of pick, like, prioritize, you know, which people do you want to work with the most, which people's, you know, can you work with, but maybe isn't your, you know, main direction, and which people just aren't sadly going to make the cut, you know, for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. And the get it factor is something I kind of use to take off the first tier, where it's like, man, if you just kind of don't, we all know those guys, the ones that move to town and are like, you know, too eager, or they're annoying, or they're egotistical, or any other number of personality issues, or their chops on whatever they do just aren't together yet, and they don't even know that. Like, that's getting it. Like, sort of being able to assess, like, where in the picture you sit, what you're good at, what you need to work on, how you're going to get there. And, like, those are the guys I want to work with, are the ones that are sort of acutely aware of, you know, which means that they don't have to be, not everybody has to be, like, the best person at the one thing they do for me to want to work with them. They just have to sort of have some sort of, like, perspective on reality, I guess, you know. But to talk about, like,
well, and the get it factor that I was referring to was also, it was different than that, which was go and just get it.
Yeah,
like, put the work in to get it.
Right.
But you're put the work in to get it. To, like, go get it to get it. Is
yeah,
what we're both saying. I mean,
right.
that's where I was from.
No,
you put the work in to get it.
Yeah. And you know, so you're kind of asking about, like, well, remind me. We're
about what you. I mean, obviously you've explained to me that you don't, like, that clarity of what you want is changing.
Oh, right.
Like, that's moving.
Right.
But what do you enjoy now? Like, what are you looking at now?
So. Well, on your original point is, like, did I always want to do that? No, I my first goal here was to you know, get on with a real artist, to get on the bus and do that thing and try it. But I really knew I wanted to work my way into sessions. I knew it was going to take time, you know. And when I came, like, 6 or 7 years ago, and I kind of decided, like, I'm doing that, I was really trying to, like, I'm going to stay in town and figure out how to do the 10 and the 2 and the 6 session guy drummer thing, you know?
Because, yeah, when you and I came to town, that was it.
It was still rocking, you know? It was kind of
absolutely
on the way towards a change, but it hadn't yet. And that's what I wanted to do. And it just, in the meantime, everything else happened. You know, while I was trying to kind of get that off the ground, it was like, well, maybe I'll learn, you know, I'll set up a recording rig at home. Maybe that'll get me in with some younger writers. I can kind of do some basic stuff for them. That's not actually what happened at all, you know, because as soon as you have a setup, they want to record all of it with you. And so then I'm like, well, maybe I could do some production stuff. And so it was a gradual process of falling into stuff. And now kind of what I've realized I really enjoy is, I mean, really anything having to do with making a record, I'm going to want to be a part of. Mm-hmm. But the production, the working, like, my favorite thing is when the song is done, when it comes to me and it's great. You know, I don't dislike writing music, but when it's for other people's projects, I don't like to have to write it for them.
Yeah.
And so great song comes in, artist that sort of knows who they are as an identity, knows what direction they want to go in. And then I really enjoy the, like, sculpting of the arranging of stuff. I love writing parts. I mean, I've been, you know, talking about adding skill sets. Like, I spent the last 2 years now taking piano and guitar lessons so that I could up my piano playing and start my guitar playing, you know? And I don't necessarily want to.
I mean, there it is. Go and get it.
Yeah.
If there's anything that young musicians need to listen to, it's everything that you're preaching.
Well, and I mean, you know,
you and I are in our mid-30s, and you're taking guitar and
starting new things.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, and I don't think that it's like, and again, all of there's always a duality with that stuff with me. Like, I don't do stuff typically because I need to get this gig, or I see a money-making opportunity here. You know, I mean, the Ableton thing could have made me a lot more money. I just didn't like it. Yeah. And so I sort of torpedoed it, mm-hmm. Professionally. I mean, I do stuff because I know it can serve me, but it's also something that, like, it's that curiosity again. It's like, man, I'm tired. I was tired of not having developed my piano chops more than I had. It was like just enough to be super frustrating. Mm-hmm. And so now I can, like, don't call me for sessions on piano. I'm not that guy. Mm-hmm. But if you're producing and arranging and you need parts, you need, like, I can do that now. I'm comfortable with that. I use it as an arranging tool. I play it on records when I can do it in my own time and take a second,
Studio chops. I have great
modern
guitar studio chops.
Modern studio chops. The opposite of what studio chops used to be. If you have to be amazing in the first take, this is now like, I got a second. Yeah. But I don't do that really. I don't take the lessons really just to be able to play it on records. A lot of it was to understand so I could speak more intelligently as a producer. I did not like being
conversing with another.
Yeah, I really did not like being in a control room, having great players, not quite playing what I could hear in my head, and me not being able to articulate it, and knowing, like, that in there, or at least in my, like, inner dialogue, it's going, that guy's in there going, yeah, that's because you're a drummer and you don't know what you're doing. Yeah. And it's like, that's not really what they're thinking, but I'm thinking that because sometimes they are, but most of the time it's just me thinking, being insecure about stuff. And so
it's like that's a deep form of musical empathy. Like, you're like in a deep place there.
I wanted to be able to say, hey man, just like, no, like, clean tone, maybe the Strat with a bridge pickup and kind of a tenthy voicing. And I don't want to be any more specific than that, but that's pretty friggin' specific. Yeah. So you know what I mean now, and you'll do the thing, and so, but it just serves my musicianship and everything else. And again, so it's like, there's the half of it that I can justify and say, well, the guitar lessons and the piano lessons and the learning to mix and all those things, they've served me. They do serve me. In fact, they serve me extremely well, because that's how you get to the point where you can say no, is because you've got enough skills to where you're doing, you start to have choices, you have options of what people come to you for different things. But there's definitely that's at best 50% of the motivation. And the other 50% is just the, like, I love music and I want to do it. I want to make it. I want to hear the sound, and I want to be the guy that made it. Not on every record, but even if I'm just sitting in my room by myself, like, I love this guitar tone on this record. I want to be able to make it. It's just like I wanted to get drum sounds, or I wanted to get a certain record to sound a certain way. It's like, well, man, how do they get that? What is that? What is that thing? Well, until I can do it, I don't feel like I have it figured out. And so that's probably not great advice, but it works. It's a lot harder.
There's so much beauty in the searching of it.
I enjoy it, and I think that, like, the way I look at it too is, so if I'm driven at all by fear, if there's any kind of fear, it's in relevance. Like, so, especially this town right now is very, like, hip on, the 21-year-old with a laptop that's an Ableton that's making some cool sounds, and like, oh, he's a producer. He should produce the master of this record, and then they end up having to send it to somebody that's 50 that knows what they're doing. Yeah. And they, we're in that growing pain right now where we're trying to figure out how to balance hip with, with good. Yeah. But I want to be doing this as long as possible, and so the more stuff I can do that isn't replaceable with technology, the longer I'll get to work. Yeah. And the more I push myself to be able to do it in a relevant setting, like, I think, like, the modern pop stuff, or the the indie pop stuff, or the even the new modern country sounds. As long as you're sort of acutely aware of, like, how to get that, then you get to stick around longer and work with younger people. And so I like, it's one thing I admire about Ed Soph and like I saw him about a year ago, and I asked him if he was going to stick around the area since he's retired from North Texas. And he said, yeah, I think we're pretty invested in the community, and I really want to stay around young people and play with young people and be just in a community where that's a thing to keep me from just sort of being, off in the, glory days or whatever is kind of was kind of the.
If there's anybody that I would see going, get off my lawn, it would have been Ed Soph, but I don't know Ed Soph, so
Man,
I think that's beautiful.
You don't get to know Ed Soph, I don't think, until you're out of there.
That's what I've heard.
But I think there's a lot of wisdom. I mean, that guy never opened his mouth and didn't spew a lot of wisdom. And so
every time there's very few because he didn't come
even
to
his
our world.
Casual conversations, like stuff like that, I'm like, and so if there's any sort of fear operation, because there's not a lot, but that's one thing that I kind of go, well, cool, I want to be able to keep doing this. And so to me, to rest on the laurels of playing a single instrument, especially one that a lot of people like to program, including myself sometimes, didn't seem like a good long-term plan. So I wanted to be able to do more, and in the short term it's benefited me a ton because I've also learned through the Ableton thing that different people will view you differently. Like your value to somebody will be up to them, not to you. And so some people see me as a great, I've got guys that call me to play in-town sessions. They trust me with that. They like what I bring to that. Yeah. I've got people that always use somebody else for that, but they only use me for the drum tracks that I do out of my place because they like the sounds better than the guy they use in town. And other people use me as a producer, and a few people use me as just a mixer. Not very many, because I don't advertise that. But nobody uses me as a guitar player or piano player, and I wouldn't let them, But yeah, well, we'll see. I have no aspirations to get into that game, but that's,
Isn't it funny how everybody, like, when you're that kind of person and you're a hustler like that and you've got all those skills that everybody looks at you, like you could choose to take that with an ego and being like, well, I do all this, man. Like, what the hell? Or you can be like, hey, I'll be that for you because. Well, and
so that's where, like, you're talking about, it's been a theme on your stuff, and we've talked about it a bunch of like the you can't tell me I can't do that, and being a negative thing, right? Yeah. That's where that's a negative thing. Yeah. When you feel like because you can do more than one thing that you should be allowed to for that person. Like, well, you don't need that guy. I mean, not that any of us would be like, hey, get rid of Roy over here. You don't need him, or Bob. I'll cut that price in half. But it's more the like. It's the overeager thing, which is like the sort of naive newbie thing of like, well, man, I can also, I could do this, and there's something to be
said.
Which
is entirely fear-based.
It's entirely fear-based, and it's so, and ego-based, right?
Absolutely.
Where it's like...
which coincide with each other, absolutely.
Yeah, where it's like, well, man, like I'm here to do your, to do X for you, and you're paying me money, you're paying me the rate I've asked for, hopefully. Yeah. And I'm so afraid of being cast in the wrong light, or not getting to do the thing I want, or just so like but I'm this, and I need you to know that, then I'm gonna like sabotage this relationship to be like, I could also do this, and I can also do this, and we've all ran into that guy, and we've probably all been that guy a time or two, and I think the wise ones of us figure out how to get over that, where it's like, man, just be the thing that they want you to be. Yeah. Like, I don't...
And do that to the best of your ability.
Yeah. And man, if if you're getting called to like I'm doing some records right now with somebody, and we co-produce a lot of stuff together, but there's been a few lately that for just reasons of how they came about, and sort of the nature of where the work came from, it made more sense for him to be a sole producer on paper. Which if I'm going to do the ego thing, it's like, well, but I do as much or more of the arranging and production work, like I'm not writing this music, but I'm doing I'm producing the tracks. I should be the producer, this isn't fair. And it's like, not to sound like callous, but it's like, well, what's it pay? Oh, really well? And we get to use our normal guys, and you're going to still let me do what I like to do? It just is going to say a different thing on the inside of the album jacket. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm good with that. Yeah. You know? Because I feel like I'm being treated fairly. If I wasn't, that's different. But I do think like being cool with being different things to different people. You know, I don't call the guys that call me and go, hey man, I hear you're great at the drum tracking thing from your home studio. Can you do some tracks? I don't go, yeah. And the next time you've got a session at Blackbird, you should call me for that too. Yeah. I assume if they want to do that thought has occurred to them. And if they don't, they don't. And I really learned that when I got into that role of the producer, where people were, you know, people that do get it were still kind of doing that to me and going, hey man, you know, I can cover this for you too, or I could do that, or I could do that. It's like, man, you know, I'm making decisions not based on the things that you're thinking about. You know, I'm making decisions on casting players based on what the project needs, or based on who we used on the last one that the client already loved, or based on, you know, your road schedule and me knowing that I might need you to be pretty flexible and you're probably not going to be. And that's going to save me some trouble with the guy that just lives in town, you know? And so, yeah, I mean, that all that sort of plays into if you can get to that place and be at peace with sort of, you know, just feel the stuff that comes in for what it is. Do you want to do it for what the benefits are? Mm-hmm. Yes or no? Take it and then move to the next thing. And if you want to, you know, if you're mixing a record for somebody, but you really wanted to play drums on something, then go find a record to play drums on. Yeah. It's just a different one, you know? And that way you do that long enough and you get to say no to stuff, because then stuff comes in where you're like, well, in fact, I don't want to do that. Mm. For what the trade-off is. It's not, I'm either not a good fit, or it's just not the right time, or, you know, whatever. But that's how I've created that, like, thing. And it wasn't intentional. Everything I've done has been completely, like, just driven on what's the next thing I can do to be better. And all the work I get is merely a byproduct of that.
Well, I want to go back to that topic, because that's something that's been driven into me in a very peaceful way as a child from my father, and it's the same thing that you're talking about. I don't know if I've ever said this in the podcast before, but the idea that, and I think it's a very cultural thing, like it's a very Canadian thing that I'm about to say, which has serviced me well, and obviously you're saying the same thing, but the best way to go about life is to show people and don't tell people. Yeah. Because as soon as they see it for themselves and they've grabbed onto it, then it means more than if you were to tell them that you do that. And anytime I've ever tested that, which has been very rare because it comes back negatively quickly. It is so much more powerful. I mean, it's pretty crazy. Like I had an example of it yesterday where I just did a gig with a really respected musician in town, and he's now got me on these other things that are coming up, and he knows me as a woodwind guy, you know, right. And we just talk and have a great time. He's an older musician who I respect the shit out of, and he's like one of the best at his instrument. And he's been in Nashville a long time, and we just talk, and he knows me as that, and that's fine. And he sent me a text yesterday, and we have a pretty big gig coming up at the Ryman. And he said, hey, I need somebody to cover a piano part. Do you play piano? And I was like, yeah, I do. And he goes, great. Well, you can cover that, you know? And all of a sudden my value to him has gone up. Mm-hmm. And he said, I figured you did. And the words, I figured you did, is better than you told me that you did this. Right. It's like, I figured you did. So it's been like, that's a small example that just literally happened yesterday. And now my value to him is I am more valuable. Right. Now, sometimes I just want to exist as a woodwind player. Sure. You know, that would be fine too. And a lot of the times in certain situations, I don't want to work extra harder, any more harder than that, because that's what it pays. Right. But there's a thing that I think is really beautiful, where when people discover what you can do, that you can bring more value to them. And a good example to me is, and you've done it a bazillion times and I have too, where you're sitting in a studio, the Pro Tools session is sitting there, and you're sitting, you just cut a track, and they're trying to figure out how to edit something, and it's driving you up the wall because you could do it 10 times faster. Yeah. But you understand what it is, what it means, and you sit there, and if something, the way that it happens a lot of the time is it'll just take extra time, or something will happen where they'll be like, hey, I just can't figure this plugin, like I'm not working it. And you go, and you take your moment and you step up and you have the respect of the room and you say, hey, I think I can help you.
Right.
You do it and everybody pays attention and it's like all of a sudden now you're bringing more value to the session, so they're going to call you for the next thing.
Right.
And I think that's what you do in spades, where every conversation I've ever had with you has been that. Like we literally walked into my studio and we're talking about a different compressor that you've discovered. I mean, you're a drummer, but you're also this and you're that. And we talked about a new, or EQ, sorry. We talked about the new the Pultec Barm Audio copy of the Pultec. And we're talking about an EQ. And now I have more knowledge because you have been here in my life.
Right.
And I now know you as that, and I respect you as that, because all you're doing is speaking your truth and being yourself. Right. You're not like, hey dude, I got to show you something. I got to tell you something, you know?
Yeah. I know how to use an EQ too.
Yeah.
I'm not just a drummer. I do think there's man, like that can of worms is so deep, you know. And
I know.
So
we
many,
can talk about that.
So many like tangents in my head. That coffee's definitely working too. But it's you know, I think again, I mean, it really depends on your personality type, and you and I are similar in that we both have a lot of natural curiosity about things, and it is that there's no separating that from the guy that's like, you can't tell me I can't do that. That's part of, you know, you need that guy. You just need to be able to tell him to wait his turn, you know.
That's a very powerful guy.
Yeah. I mean, and honestly, like I thought the best I've ever heard that put, at least in recent memory, was when Dustin was on here talking about like the inner critic and being like, you need him, just tell him to be.
I love that.
Sit down.
Yes.
I actually told an artist that this week, and she's a younger artist, and I said, you need that, but you need to, you know, like don't look. I told her, I said, it's like finishing a song is like you're running through the dark woods. Keep going. Don't turn around and look behind you, because that's when she goes, so my inner critic is like the Slender Man. And I was like, sure, that's fine.
That's so true.
But
that's pretty good.
But you need that. You know, we have that edge on us, but some guys are really content to just play their horn, just play their guitar, just play their drum kit.
Good for them,
and that's they dedicate everything to just being as good as they can at that one thing. And absolutely, like there was a minute when I was in my transition from just being, you know, I'm drummer guy and that's what I do, to like, well, I'm gonna learn how to do a little bit of this, but I'm still just gonna be a drummer. I don't want to confuse people. We talked about, you know, I'm gonna learn how to do this, but I'm not. And it slowly added up, and then there was a little moment where there was a chasm, and a little negativity crept in, where I started to see some of my drummer colleagues and kind of have like why aren't you guys coming with me? Like, can't you see that this is the future and what we're doing? Like, can't you see all the opportunity here? Like, what the hell is wrong with you guys?
Dude, I know.
And then I realized eventually that wasn't them. It was me. It was my, like, I was walking away from the herd. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with being what they do. Like, what I did before. That's great. You can push that to a high level. My interest in music, at the core, as I drilled down, I discovered it wasn't drumming. It wasn't just playing drums. I was not playing drums on music with people. You know, I wasn't making music behind a drum set because I loved to play drums. I was playing drums because I wanted to make music, and so I didn't want to stop at that. And so it just meant that I was on a different path now. And so I think that's valuable in this, like, you know, in some of that self-discovery. And as far as the hustle goes, I mean, I think it just sort of is driven by that same, like, and just want to be good, you know? And I really do feel like at this point, I mean, I obviously hope my work continues to grow and that the quality of it continues to get better. And I have ideas and thoughts on, you know, I've never thought of myself as a chess player, but sort of what the next move is as far as what kind of artists and what needs to happen to up that game a little bit. But all of my drive ends up being about just like, man, how do I get as good at this as I can? Like, I'm already at a place where I'm going, I'm not going to live long enough to get as good as this as I want to get.
Yeah.
So how do I just get as
Isn't it nice when you come to that realization?
Yeah.
You're like, oh, okay, there's no end game. Like,
There's
the
no
game is what's beautiful about it.
That's exactly. And so I'm in that place now, and it's really freeing, because then you can go take a guitar lesson once a week, and everybody can look at you and go, so drummer boys taking a guitar lesson, what's up with that? And go, man, don't worry about it. Like, it's just, there's no separation between the profession and the hobby.
Yeah.
It's all just the journey, and I love that part about it, so.
Yeah, and I think you said something earlier, just a second ago, where you're like, I separated myself from the herd. I don't think that in our evolutionary history, in like our DNA, that's something that we're okay with. I think it takes. That's not something we should do to survive, and it's difficult to get out of that fear place to say, well, I want to be all of these things. I want to try all of these things, and people aren't going to understand why I'm doing those things, but screw it. I'm going to do these things.
Man,
and some people live in denial, and they look at you and they can't process you even do those things.
I know. And so there's two like things that I guess I had to go through that are fear-based that I regret about my early professional life that I would, if I had to do over again and could impart some wisdom on myself, I would do differently. And one of those is recognizing that earlier, recognizing that as fear, because I didn't, what you're talking about, you're right, it's not natural to separate yourself from whatever little herd you belong to already. Yeah. I've already been accepted in that world. I moved to Nashville.
Which is hard enough on its own.
And I was really lucky. Like, I didn't really know anybody here, but I met a few really good ones right away. And I got accepted into that drummer community immedately, And so it was hard to kind of, like, when they're not coming on the same path, and I realized, like, there's a fork in the road, and I went left, and everybody seems to be going right. Why aren't you guys coming along? And really, like, deep down, that's like, am I fucking this up right now? Like, these guys are all great, and they're not doing this. So am I making a huge mistake, And so I would like to, go back to myself 10 years ago and calm down, little buddy. This is fine.
Embrace it even more.
Yeah, embrace it more. And the other thing is that, like, I spent a lot of time as I became more diverse, worrying about how I was cast in people's minds, like getting to that place where I was cool to be different things to different people. Yeah. But also because I spent a lot of time worrying that I would just be the one thing to all of Nashville if I wasn't. So whatever that one thing was, and I even gave that horrible advice to people when they moved to town, and, hey man, can you come have coffee? And it's like, yeah. And I tell them, well, Nashville's a specialist town, which at the time, the 90s and stuff, it really was. So, pick your, like, scene that you want to be in and pick your thing that you want to be great at and be really good at it, because people are going to sort of box you into being a thing. And that was really terrible advice, and I apologize to anybody that hears that got that advice, because I think now the truth of it, and maybe in 10 years this will be bad advice, but I think now the truth of it is more that you might only be one thing to each person, to each part of your network. You might be one or two things to them. You probably won't be, if you're good at more than one thing, really good at it, you probably won't be all those things to those people. They don't need you for that. And I wish I could have not spent any time worrying about how I was being perceived and just, like, gone with my gut and chased the things that I wanted to chase, because ultimately you're going to be better at what you're into, and you're going to bring more to the table for somebody that, if you're like, man, I am pumped about, like, dude, check these analog synth patches and this drum programming out, and you're pumped about it, is way better than, like, yeah, man, I know how to do X, and you can, I get it, there's money in it, and so, like, I think that part of it I wish I had known to not worry about, but I did worry about it a lot. I was like, oh man, I want to be the drummer, but I'm going to get cast as the Ableton guy, and, like, that took, like, all of 8 seconds to eradicate from my reputation. You know what I mean? It was like, hey, I'm not doing that anymore, except for you and you, because I already started one. Okay. That was it.
Is that the switch that I said earlier that I wanted to talk to you about that specifically? Is that the switch that I saw in you? I saw a thing in you, and this is just my perspective, and I'm just, again, this is me being curious, because I've known you for a long time. I saw a thing in you where I could literally feel the words, no, I'm not going to do that, coming from your being. Not to me.
That might not be good news.
No. It's good. It's good. It's when I say that, I mean, we talked about saying the word no is a luxury that we have. It's a beautiful, beautiful luxury that we have, and it's earned, and you can't take that for granted or take it lightly, and you have to continually try to make sure you stay in that place by making the right decisions, because you're one no away from, well, you're not really.
Yeah.
Maybe you're 10 no's away from really getting screwed.
Yeah.
But yes, I could feel a switch in you where it was just kind of like, okay. It was almost like again, because I've known you for a long time. There was a thing in you at the beginning where you were just taking everything.
Yeah.
It was like, I can accommodate whatever you need.
Correct.
And then I saw a switch where it was like, I am not going to accommodate everything that you need. Tell me what you need and I'll decide.
Yeah.
And that's you saying no. And is that the same time that you came to this realization of my ego doesn't need to talk anymore. I don't need to live in fear, and I'm going to be this for this person, and that's all I need to be for that person. Like, did you have a kind of a moment, a realization where it's almost I don't know. I hesitate to say it, but I've thought it about 5 or 6 times thinking about having this conversation with you, where it's in the most positive way, in the kindest way possible, where it's a fuck you mentality.
Right, yeah.
Where you're just like, no, fuck you. Like, you have this, it's almost like we need to, I'm the same way as you, where I went through that, where you have to go to this place of fuck you to come back, and then you reside. You're
no, I know that place.
Let me test this for a second,
right.
and dip my toes in the water.
Yeah.
Oh, it's nice and warm. And then you're like, cool, I'm going to go to this pool.
Yeah.
But you've at least tried that. Like, you have to try it,
Yep.
And I saw you trying it, and I see where you're at now, and I think that you finally settled into the right place.
Yeah.
But
maybe still oscillating slightly.
True.
Yeah.
We always are. It's like, how much further can I push?
Right.
Can I put my whole foot in the water?
Yeah.
But what happened? Like, what did you make a conscious? Because I know you're a very conscious, deliberate person.
Yeah.
Did you make a conscious? Like, was this a conversation you had with yourself, with your wife, with like your dogs? Like, what was it?
Thousands of conversations with my wife.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yes.
Yeah, man, that's a great question. Well, I will start by saying that my default sort of outlook for a long time was take everything,
Yeah.
and even after I knew pretty early. I was still in college when I knew that like that wasn't going to work forever,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted really badly to be in a place where I didn't have to say yes to everything. And so like when I was on the road with people, I said no to some like in-town bar gigs and stuff. I was like, I don't need to do them. I don't want to do them. I'm not having fun, and then I'm sitting back there, and you're wondering why I'm such a drag. It's like, because I don't want to do this, and I said yes because I felt like I was supposed to.
Beautiful place to come to.
I did learn that pretty quickly, but once I transitioned over to the recording thing, it's like it started all over again. So you take everything, and I do think that there's a huge value in taking everything at first, unless you happen to be the guy that does come into your professional adult life with such a singular, clear vision that that's the only thing you want to be, then I think that's cool to for those, because I've seen people do it and it's been successful for them. So apparently that works for some people. That not me at all. So I think for a while, it's how you learn everything. It's not just how you learn how to put your skills into action, which, for me, I was getting paid not very much, but I still feel like when I'm making a record, somebody's paying me to get better at making records.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good place to be.
And so, I don't advertise that as like, hey man, so this is going to be your budget and I'm going to get better at this while we're at it, but that's every profession.
Well,
every day you're getting.
It takes a hustle mentality to get paid to learn. But if you get that in your world, that's a
if you're qualified already, you're always getting better every day you're there, and so you're getting paid to learn. But at the beginning, I wasn't really qualified. I was just dabbling, and so I did free stuff, but I did a lot of stuff that there was a small budget for, and I had to make enough to make it work. And so, I did that. I hired guys that knew how to do the things I didn't know how to do, but I spent the time with them learning how they were doing it, and I still get a lot of shit from all my buddies about that. It's like, I was asking Nate Duggar the other day about something in a studio. We were sitting in there playing, and I said, man, that's great. What what are you running from that? And Grant Pittman, do you know Grant? He's North Texas piano player. He was in the session with us, and he goes, "Don't tell him, Nate. He knows too many things now. Don't tell him anything else."
Oh, that's pretty good.
And but I bug my friends a lot.
Asking me about my reed choices. And
and I feel like the trade-off is this. I did get resentful for a while with like a lot of the Ableton questions because that's just not something you can answer over a text. Yeah. But for the most part, other than that,
I remember the Ableton time. That was a certain. Yeah, you were in a vibe for sure.
It just didn't work for me. But a lot of the other stuff, for the most part, I'm an open book, and I feel like that maybe. I don't mind if somebody doesn't want to share their secrets. I totally understand that. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to ask you to, and if you're willing to, learn from you, you know? And so I asked a lot. But yeah, no, I took everything for a while, and then I was afraid to not take everything. And then eventually taking everything wasn't working. It crossed, like, it was like a bell curve, and it hit the peak of where it was productive. But it's like a bell curve train track. You're still going to move forward on it, and now you're at the point of diminishing returns. But you can't go back. I mean, you could, I guess, sit there on that. But if quality and like you're trying to still improve what you do and climb the ladder or whatever bullshit that is, you're going to start going down because you're going to be taking all this crap that really doesn't benefit your goal anymore. And so that's where no came in. And then there was another period of time where, and this is where the thousands of conversations with the wife comes in, because it's very easy to see that in other people. I think for most people, it's very easy to see your friends or your spouse and go, you don't need to do that. Why are you still doing that? Yeah. But it's hard when you're in it.
True.
And it's hard to trust anybody, And so then that fear creeps in of, well, if I say no and like they badmouth me in town, because I didn't do their thing, or come on, make up some stupid shit, and you're worried about it, right? And so there was a while where I still did it after the point of diminishing returns started, because I was scared of what I had never done it, on that level. Also, for me, and this plays into it big, is like what you were talking about with the mentality. Is I don't have like my personality doesn't have a gentle curve between yes and no by default. Mm-hmm. I go from, yeah, that sounds great, to fuck no immediately, And so like there's no, and I know that's in there. And so it's a little bit of an art for me to, like, when I'm going to say no to something, it's really important to me to say no in a way that doesn't diminish the other person, that doesn't damage our relationship, that doesn't make them feel like I don't appreciate what they are doing, what they are trying to accomplish. And that took some conscious effort on my part to craft that, like, little bit of political savvy, if you want to call it something, you know what I mean? Just a little bit more gentle bedside manner, because
that's what it is, yeah.
Of kind of being able to say no, because I mean, you might get something and it's like, hey, we want to do this project for 6 months and pay you $50. We want to work every day. Well, that's kind of a fuck no situation, for obvious reasons. But
that might be a don't even respond.
Right. I mean, that's obviously an extreme example.
Yeah.
But and not something that actually happened. Yeah. But even that situation, like, I have been, one thing that's benefited me a lot is I still work with people like that I worked with in Texas. They still come and I do records for them now. I have, all the artists I've ever worked for were on a good, we have good relationship. I don't have a lot of, like, I don't leave damage in my wake generally. Yeah. And that really helps, because when you are that one thing to that guy, you are his drummer on the road for a while. You might become his producer in 10 years once you've done a bunch of other stuff in that world, and he wants something familiar that he trusts, and he goes, man, you've done some cool stuff. Like, well, maybe you could be this guy now. It just doesn't happen overnight. Yeah. And so I really wanted to be able to say no without it being fuck no all the time. Yeah. And finding the sweet spot where you could do that. And then honestly now I'm because I've gotten better at that. So I wouldn't say I had a moment. I had a year. I had a year of kind of realizing like, well, if I keep saying yes to all this stuff that comes in, then it takes up, like, I've only got so much time in a day, so much time in a week. And I can only move so fast. And it took me even longer to realize that some of that's okay. Like, some of the fact that, like, this is just your process and how long it takes you to get the result that you're looking for. It's all right. Not everything has to happen instantly. What do you want to spend your time doing? And that's where you sort of are faced and forced to make that decision of like, well, you're going to get calls to do stuff that you can't do. And I still look for a way to say yes. Hey, we want to do 2 weeks in the studio, but here's what we've got budget-wise, and here's the music. And, you're sort of assessing like where they're at in their career and all that stuff too. And you kind of look at all of it and go, yeah, I mean, I think you guys would be better suited if you want to work with me if we just kind of ran in and did this in like a couple of days and for that budget. And that's sort of what that would get you. If you need the time and that's where your budget is, I'm probably not the right fit. So, that's the nicer no, then, and then it puts it back on them to sort of make decisions. And sometimes it's just, I can't, I'm booked or I'm not a good fit but yeah, I mean, it was sort of a forced thing of if I want to have time to work on the things that are important to me, then I have to start saying no to things. You have to. You have no choice but to, because if you're lucky enough to get any kind of success, enough to keep a roof over your head and whatever, and that grows over time, you're going to hopefully end up with more opportunities than you can take. And so then it becomes that game. But this year, I've, like, some of the things I've done have necessitated that I step up and deliver a fuck no to somebody that has the power to end my tenure in that position. Yeah. But I think like having control over that enables you to use it strategically when you know it's going to have the impact, or you hope it's going to have the impact that produces a positive result. You're saying no to something, maybe not an opportunity, but you're saying, hell no, we're not doing that way. Only when that's the only way to get to be heard, and so, yeah, I mean, that's kind of my spiel, I guess, on saying no. But that's how I feel like it comes about for me and most people that do kind of similar things that I do. Is you sort of, it's a gradual process of like, well, if I have, my 5 buckets that I can fill up, one for each day of the week, and I was filling all 5 of them up with very like beginner level stuff when I was a beginner, and then I had some intermediate stuff, and it's slowly grown, and now it's like, well, I've got like 3 or 4 like advanced level, clients that want a lot of this time, and I've got a bunch of other clients that maybe the opportunity isn't as good for me for whatever reason. It's like, well, I have to pick and choose, and so I'll have to say no to some things that I used to say yes to. So yeah, I don't know if that's helpful, but
well, it is. I mean, I would say that that's definitely the vibe that I was getting, and it's cool to hear you explain it. I would also say that the vibe that I started to see in you was more of a peacefulness, like a less eager-y kind of thing. It was like a very, you felt very at peace.
Yeah, I feel like I've finally, like, even though I'm still chasing like new instruments, and there's always another thing to to want to be good at or just be better at what you already do. I do feel like I've kind of discovered who I am in the career, music chase or whatever, and really as a human being too. Like a lot of like I sought out a lot more balance in my life, So I still work a ton, but I do the bike thing now. Like I'll go ride, and I took care of my diet issues, and things that and just started kind of and don't do things like I don't go out hardly ever. I will. I mean, some months are busier than others, and I might go out once a week to some event in the evenings, but I'm not out late. I don't go out to a bunch of gigs, and like I get up early and I work, and then I try to like eat healthy, and I try to exist with some balance and some time for for practicing or for learning or for reading or for just watching Netflix and not giving a shit for a little while, because you need that recharge time, or like, again, the diminishing returns kick in and you're just not as good as you could be. And that, once I started feeling the benefits of that, there's a security that comes in that, and it's like, oh wow, and my work didn't all go away. I didn't have to be, nobody punished me for not taking every gig you can get. That's how you make it in this thing. It's like, no, I don't really know if that was ever true. I wasn't around in the 50s, 60s, 70s, but it definitely isn't true now. I mean, and the guys that I look up to don't just say yes to everything. And, it's like, it is a luxury to be able to be selective, but it takes a lot of really hard work. And I think in my case, a lot of kind of strategic planning to end up at that place. And then it still takes a long time to trust that it's okay to let go and be that way. So yeah, I mean, definitely more peaceful, and knowing who you are and what you want to work on and what's important makes it easier to say no to stuff that just isn't in line with that. It's like, it becomes simple. It's like, man, is this it's like time, money, and, the project. And do those things even out somehow to be a yes. And if they don't, then they don't.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And like, sometimes, I did have one artist client that I don't know if they had their feelings hurt, but I feel like they might have this year, because we did some writing and some stuff. We worked on some things, and it just became clear even in the writing stage that we weren't compatible to me. Like the sort of the way they like to run their group. It was definitely I can't give you what you need because you're making me do everything you say situation. And when I brought that to their attention of like, hey, what is it you want me to do? Well, we want you to do this. We kind of want you to keep us in, like keep us from straying too far outside the lines. So cool. I don't feel like we've done that very well for the last 3 or 4 days. Every time I kind of say, well, that might not, maybe we should do it this way. It's a little combative. Like, you guys argue with me and then do what you want.
Yeah.
And that sort of ended everything. Like, the vibe was dead immediately. It was like, there was no, and I was cool with it. Like, I felt a huge sense of, like, that was scared the shit out of me a few years ago. Like, oh my God, I told the truth and it backfired.
Yeah.
And it was like instant peace for me. It was like an instant like relief, a load off my shoulders, because I felt the vibe in the room die. It's like, all the trust that they were trying to put in me, they just stopped trying. And I thought,
well, it sounds like it wasn't even there to begin with.
No, not really.
Yeah.
They were trying, and it wasn't there because they weren't ready to do they'd set a goal because they knew it was a good goal, but they weren't really ready, I don't think, to pursue that. And if they were, it wasn't with me or whatever. But it was just a nice moment for me of failure, like a beautiful failure, where it's like, well, this isn't going to work, and that's progress.
Yeah.
Like, we were working on this to see if it was going to work. It's not. So we actually accomplished what we set out to accomplish, which was we found out whether or not this was a good fit.
Yeah.
It's not. And now we can just move on, and nobody has to have their feelings hurt,
I mean, it really is based on relationships in any capacity. I mean, it's no different than like a dating scenario where
Right.
you show up. I mean, you could show up and the person, you're desperate for get the person to like you, or you show up in a place where you're like, this just doesn't work. Let's have a good day. Peace, you know? And I think that's the same thing with you and the relationships you built with people in general in this town too.
Yeah.
The longer you're here, the more you find those people.
Yeah, and like you try new things, and sometimes it doesn't.
It's okay if it doesn't work.
Yeah, it's okay, and I think if out of those situations somebody does get their feelings hurt, they're just maybe not. I mean, I don't want to project too much onto other folks, but I think maybe for me, when that would have hurt, it would have been because I hadn't figured out that was okay yet.
Yeah.
It would have hurt my feelings because I would have thought it's my job to make everything work all the time, to say yes to everything, and to make this work.
Me and
Yeah,
for sure.
and it's like, but that's not true. It's just, this isn't a good fit. Like, I want to do this, and this is my process for how to get this done. Now, somebody else will have a different process for how to get this done, and maybe it'll communicate better to you, and maybe you'll get it a little bit better, but for whatever reason, it doesn't, or maybe not. Maybe you just aren't ready. But either way, this chemistry doesn't work, and that's okay. And like, you know, and conversely, another group that I'm working with a lot right now, if you don't tell them the unabated truth, they will call you on it immediately. And it's a great position to be in. Mm-hmm. It's where you get to swing the fuck no bat sometimes, you know, and nobody's, you know, it's like, even if somebody gets their feelings hurt, they're laughing about it 30 minutes later. And
but
it's
you have
like,
to earn that trust, though.
Them. But the way I earned a lot of it was by being that way. It was like, we need the outside perspective. We can't trust ourselves to make that decision. Yeah. So we need somebody to say that's working or it's not, you know. And I lose a lot of the battles, you know. They overrule all the time. But
you're heard.
But I'm heard and I'm valued and I'm respected, and in the end it's collaborative. I don't need to win I don't need to have my way on everything when it's a creative collaboration. We just need to get to the end result that they're happy with, and I'm trying to help facilitate that, you know. And if they're happy with that, you know, then great. But yeah, it's been nice to kind of, because I did misstep once or twice where I'd be like, well, you know, it's usually on something that's unimportant to me, you know. It'd be a question of, well, what do you think about this? Oh, it's cool, that's fine, you know. Somebody else is, you told me you didn't like that. I'm like, oh, yeah, I did. I don't like that. I just didn't want to talk about it right now, you know. Didn't want to talk about it right now. Yeah. But yeah, okay, let's hash it out, you know. And so I like working with people like that, though, because it's just easier to put your cards on the table. And like music production and creation is invariably a trust-based exercise. If you are working with, if you're an artist that is going to 100% self-produce, engineer, write, record, mix and master, you don't have to trust anybody. Yeah. Otherwise, you're going to have to trust people. Mm-hmm. And especially your producer, there needs to be a trust and for the artist, a willingness to not need to control the process. To me, I prefer an artist that has a clear vision of the desired result and can help guide me to make sure that that's what we're getting, mm-hmm. you know. But the artists that maybe, because I find they work in converse most of the time. So you either got the guy that totally hears what he wants it to sound like. Yeah. And he is trusting you to get it there. He doesn't know about that, he doesn't care about that, or he does know about it, but you're doing it, you know? Or you have the guy that sort of doesn't trust what you're doing for the process. He's going to question all of it, or you know, if they have a little knowledge, you know, it's like we joke about the Pro Tools owners, you know, mm-hmm. like the dangerous ones, you know. Mm-hmm. I've got Logic. How does, you know, what are you doing with that EQ over there? It's like, well, do you want to learn, or are you asking me if I know what I'm doing? You know what I mean?
Be relative.
And I think both of those things. I work with both, and I don't mind either one of them. I prefer obviously. I mean, everybody prefers the one that's
well, like, I mean, in that situation, you're getting paid to service a certain situation, too.
Right.
Like, and it's not a babysitting, but it's a thing. You know?
It's a thing. Yeah. And so, you know, my job becomes more psychological. I have to shift into...
Which is what a producer is.
Yes. You know, so you start working on earning trust in different ways. Yeah. And you do have to sort of sometimes kind of... sometimes you take a second and work with them and explain things or work on earning trust moments. And other times I find that the better plan is to politely shush the fly away a little bit. Just be like, no, man, like you don't need to worry. We probably have, but it's like, you know, you don't need to, dude, don't worry about that right now. Yeah. Just, you know, I'm good. We're good. Just make a note of it and bring it up if you think about it again. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there's, and I've watched. I can
see you just turning your chair around and just leaning forward and just saying, do you really need to know what that EQ does, or should we just kind of move on? You know?
Yeah, and I never say anything like that. I never really do, but I will say stuff all the time, like, no, man, you don't need to worry about that. Like that's good. Trust me on this. Like, mm-hmm. don't we don't want to dig through that. Like, mm-hmm. you know, and that is my job to sort of know like when a concern for them is valid and is maybe really gonna either make them feel much better mm-hmm. or actually might improve the end result, because I'm not the only guy that's got good ideas, you know. True. And so taking outside opinions, even those of people that maybe haven't done this before, sometimes they got good ideas. Sometimes they hear something and they're like, well, what if we did this? Or, you know, hey man, I'm kind of hearing this as being sort of a thing. And it might be something that I sort of was going, is that a thing? I don't know if it's a thing or not. Let's just keep going. And they go, that's kind of a thing to me. I go, good. It was kind of a thing to me and I wasn't sure. And now you've helped tip the scales. Nice. So it's great to know to get that feedback from them. But there is an element of knowing when they need to have that input, and knowing when it will be detrimental to their end result. I need to give you what you need, not what you're telling me to do right now. And earning that trust. But some of them, the more questioning they are of the process, usually the less sure they are about what they want the end result to be also. So it's like they're focused on the minutia in the process because they just haven't quite like solidified. Because when they know, like, man, I want this to sound like this, and I know that I'm getting it, they always know we're getting it too. Because they hear it. They can hear like, oh yeah, but when they don't know what they want to hear coming out the other end, it's like, well, is that right? Is that right? Is that right? Is that right? And that's a pretty common place, I think, for most producers to be with independent artists, especially. And, that's the hardest part maybe about the modern generation of producers and arrangers versus if you were a really successful producer, generations ago, you had labels that were footing the bill, and they had a lot of say. You had to fight that battle. You had to fight the A&R people. Yeah, you had all that. I mean, there's a whole new nest of political shit to have to deal with for those guys.
Now it's the money people. Yeah.
And so that's not to be discounted. But I do think also those labels ran defense a lot of times between the producers and the artist. It was like, in the end, I have to deliver this kind of thing to this label because that's what they're paying for. And the artist was sort of like, I've even talked to other session players about this that were older, and this is a quote from one of them is, man, the artist was the low man on the totem pole back then. The players, the producer, and the label were making all the decisions. Singer just sang. That's country Nashville, but now the artist is often self-funding the project, which makes him your boss as the producer, yet you need to be the kind of the one in charge of the production.
Interesting.
And so that always creates a little bit of like, well, we have to, that's where the trust comes in. It's like you have to sort of trust that you've decided to pay me, and the way you're going to maximize the benefit of that money that you're putting in for this time is to now let go. And I would suck at that if I were an artist, so I don't blame them for when they're trying to be a little controlling, but it is better for the result, I think, with everybody,
Yeah, that's an interesting switch, because they absolutely, I mean, and not only that, is a lot of the artists, like, this is their shot, it's not cheap,
It's not, and it's something that is really hard to say to somebody because it is so expensive. Even low budget stuff is still expensive,
Absolutely, yeah.
But it is like anything else. You have to do it consistently to get better at it. And so, the most practical advice to that with people is, man, get in and record like EP length things, 4 to 6 songs every 6 months or a year, whatever you can swing, but kind of come up with a plan for how you're going to like do this over a 2 or 3 year period, because when you put all that pressure on your first thing ever, and it's got to be the thing and it's got to make it work, it's like the chances of it doing that, just even the numbers game, no matter how good it is, are really low, right? And then the chances that you're good enough at it yet as an artist, and you've got the songs and you've got, you don't have any feedback from wherever your avenue is, if you're pursuing radio or independent radio or sync placement or whatever, until you've got something that you're pushing to see if it'll work. You don't have any feedback on what people. So you have to sort of be able to sharpen that tool like anything else. But man, that's a hard thing to talk about with them, because nobody wants to hear that when they're shelling out money for their
they want it overnight for sure.
Their record, and overnight, and the mediocrity culture that we're suffering from right now that's a hard one for me with artists, of like or from anybody, honestly. Like you and I, all of our peers are driven to be like it was about getting good first, and about getting successful.
It'll come, success will come.
And I'm not going to sit here and say, back in our day we were patient. Like we were, you weren't. I know you. No. I knew you. You weren't patient.
No.
And I wasn't patient. And nobody's patient when they're young. You know, we all want it now.
Wait, we're still young, man. Come on.
Yeah, we're not too old yet. You know, when we were babies. You know, but I do worry a little bit now that and maybe it is just I'm a little older and I just don't, you know, have that perspective or whatever. But I don't think so. I feel like there's something where if it's successful now, then that makes it good. Like, we're not allowed to say that it's not good. Mm-hmm. We're not allowed to say, well, just because so-and-so had a hit, or just because so-and-so's famous, or just because so-and-so's rich and getting attention, you know, or has 1 billion Instagram followers, or whatever measure you want to use, that isn't the actual product they produce. In this case, music or whatever, their art, you know. You can't say the music's bad, or that they're not a good singer, or that they're not a good writer. Like, you know, well, you can't. It's subjective, and you can't say that. Look how many people, you know, are following them. And I don't totally agree with that. I think that there's a subjective element to music, and I do think that there's bad music that moves people, and it's valid. Yeah. I think that's great. That doesn't make it good.
Yeah.
And I think that there's stuff that I mean, all of it has a right to exist, and if it's popular and people love it, that's awesome. But for up and coming artists, because I work with a lot of younger, you know, like late teenagers into their mid-20s artists, and I just, like, the musician in me and the student in me so desperately wants to impart on them, like, work on being badass, so that if whatever your fame and fortune goal doesn't come to fruition, you could still do music, you could still do art, or you would just know how to achieve greatness at something, so that you could take that into whatever's next.
Yeah.
You know, or you could keep working on this and eventually achieve this goal, because you're focused on being amazing, not on being not on going, well, I want the payoff, and you can't tell me that being mediocre isn't good enough, because here's all these examples of mediocrity that are famous and rich. So why would I do your thing? And I do get that from time to time from people, even in just conversations. It's like, why bother, man? Look at all this, you know? Mm-hmm. It's like, well, I have no answer for that, because if you don't know that, I'm not sure I can teach it to you, you know? Yeah. But I don't know. What do you think about that? Like, do you see that going around, or is that just me being
No,
jaded?
I mean, you're obviously working with a lot, like that particular generation, probably more than I am.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think my perspective on that wouldn't be a fair perspective. But I think the thing is that, yeah, we are because music is so subjective, that we are validating it with how many likes and followers back it, you know?
Right.
And I think that's what's shaping pop music.
Totally.
So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. It's like if
either.
Somebody wears something that's really cool and brands themselves as something, and then wants to put a song out, and because that song has momentum, because that person's already famous, then everybody tries to make something like that, because pop music is notoriously a following culture.
Right. Derivative of itself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I still believe that things always rise to the top. I'd like to pretend that that's the case.
Yeah.
But I don't choose to work with artists of that age, so I commend you.
Yeah. Well,
that's just not my scene, man.
I work with a few of them. I mean, they're getting older, thank God, as I get older. I mean, I love the young ones too, but I do like working with the ones that have a little more experience, you know. But it's just a thing that I run into. I run into it with ones that are older too, you know, it's just usually by their late 20s or 30s, they're old enough to know that it's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah.
You know, so the ones that I work with that are that age, this never comes up, you know. Yeah. But it comes up with the younger ones that haven't figured it out yet, and it is something that, yeah, I don't know. I don't know that it's good or bad. I'm not an elitist in any sense. I mean, well, I'd like to think I'm not. I probably am, but I try not to be. I'm pretty open to if that's how we're going to decide what's great. Cool. Let's find the best people and get them the most Instagram likes. You know,
if that's what matters,
right? You know. And figure out how to make something that is, you know, meaningful, maybe, you know, and maybe it doesn't have to be. Some stuff can just be fun and frankly, have a short shelf life. I think that's okay. You know, it's entertainment. It doesn't have to, not everything has to be, yesterday. You know, like you don't write that every day.
But you have to understand that game is the short game. And like you're saying, like the people in their late 20s and early 30s, the long game is get enough fans that you can have a long career.
Yeah.
And they're going to buy your stuff.
Right. So if you've got your 3-minute pop song about a breakup or whatever, the soup du jour is, I think those are great. I love working on some of those things because you get to do cool production stuff and great vocal things and people love that stuff and they eat it up and everybody gets, it's fun to listen to sometimes too, So I think everything I'm saying can also be countered with you probably shouldn't try to write Eleanor Rigby or Yesterday every single time you sit down and write, or you're going to be disappointed and you're also not going to put very much music out. But you should just sort of be aware, like, of where that bar is and where the genre and the history comes from that you're in, and what is great, and try to, just make sure you're really good at whatever it is. If all you're going to do is sing and you're not going to write, great, but just be good. Be good at it. Be entertaining. Figure out what makes who's doing what you do at the top level and why are they so good at it, and shoot for being that instead of kind of going, well, I don't want to work very hard. I just want it
to work.
Yeah. So, I don't know. That's my only like bitter.
Well,
it's not even bitter. I really want them to benefit from. I think that it comes from a place where I love learning about it and love being able to do it so much that I want to share that with them. And so when they don't express that curiosity or interest because their goals are so different than mine, it's just more challenging for me as a producer to go, oh, okay, so you're coming from this place. How do I service that and not impose my stuff on it? And then I can go home and bitch about how I wish everybody was Paul McCartney, including me.
I know. I can imagine those sessions. I can envision it for sure. Yeah, where sitting on the telephone while singing something into a microphone, or sitting on your phone looking at Instagram while singing something. It's not. There's no feeling. It's like there's an element of distraction constantly.
Yeah, it almost makes it feel like it's being taken for granted, or you know what I mean. Like, and so it's like, well, this can be so much more enriching in of itself. Yeah.
But you find those diamonds in the rough. You'll find, I've worked with them. I've put horns on records and sat there with, like, I did one earlier this year with this 21-year-old singer who was genuine and kind and badass and wanted to learn and came in and was like, what's that? What's this instrument? Like, those kind of people still exist, but that's a thing,
We're talking about the artists and just kind of the chess moves, and that's sort of where I'm at now, is like I have mostly those now. I mean, most of what I'm talking about is from, 3 and 4 years ago experiences, and so it may not even be relevant now. But I get it once in a while. I get about once a year. I'll get somebody that's sort of in that boat. But for the most part, I try really hard to. That's kind of the next step for me, is going, hey, where's the next 21-year-old that's great, that wants to be great, that has something to say at least. Where's the next 35-year-old that has something to say? The next 50-year-old that has something to say? Whatever it is, the age isn't the thing, but like, where are the people that I think when the project is done, we nailed whatever they were going for, and they know it, and I know it, and it's what they wanted to say, and they had something, and it was there. Because I don't really care. Like I told a prospective client the other day, that was a little definitely more on the sort of artistic musical side of things than the commercial, and she looked at me and said, she goes, I like you because I always felt like my producer was going to be a guy with a long beard and no shoes, And I was like, yeah, I could definitely see how you would fall into that. And she's like, but I think I kind of already have enough of that, and you're kind of the balance that I need. I said, I think that's kind of wise. I said, yeah. And she's like, but and you don't kind of come across as the guy that would, I mean, you do a lot of commercial, pop music and country music. I was afraid you'd just kind of try to change all my stuff. And I looked at her and I said, I don't care what kind of record you want to make, as long as you make the one that you set out to make.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's pop. I don't care if it's art music. I mean, there's genres and stuff that I just don't know enough about to feel confident in my ability to help them.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's in my wheelhouse of like, I get this, I get what you want to do,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I can help, I don't care. I'm not going to try to force it into being another thing. I just want to pick something, not pick 5 things. Pick one thing. Pick a thing that the center, like nucleus point you want to go for. Everything else, all your variety will exist naturally, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So aim for your bullseye, and I just want to make sure that we truck straight towards that, you know. And that's all I care about with. That's how I get to make different kinds of records, is by not trying to make them all the same record.
And defining the bullseye is important, because then you can make a choice whether you want to chase that or not.
Right.
You know.
Right.
Yeah, I think a lot of artists don't really have that, because they don't really know. They think they know, but yeah, that's interesting.
That's a lot of the pre-production process is finding out whether they actually know what their bullseye is or not. You know, because they'll almost all tell you that they have some sort of, you know, I want to sound like this. And so then you ask them again a week later, and if it's still the same, we're in good shape. You know what I mean? But sometimes it's not, and that's okay. But it's my job to kind of figure out, like, how zoned in are you, and how much help do you need with that before we start pressing the red button? You know what I mean?
Of course. Because that would be a shit show for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, if you're always chasing that moving bullseye.
Yeah. I think a lot of the work is done before the red button gets pushed.
Yeah, of course.
You know?
Yeah, it's a lot of work, man. I commend you. Like, being a producer is, you're always working way more than you're getting paid for sure. Yeah.
It's definitely, it's in between being like a hired gun player, you know, where it's like, or engineer, where it's, you know, dollars per hour,
Yeah.
you know, and being like a songwriter, where it's like, here's a stipend and good luck, you know? And so
50% of nothing is still nothing.
dude, I don't know how those guys do it, man. I don't know how they do it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, dude, I wanted to talk. I mean, you've done some cool stuff, and I want to talk about that maybe at another point, but I wanted to get your opinion on things. But Sister Hazel had a #1 record that just came out.
Yeah.
So congratulations on that.
Thanks, man.
Probably should have said that at the beginning.
No, it's fine.
People made it this
If
far.
anybody's listening still, Mom, sorry about the fuck no comment. Yeah, they did great, man. And they're doing 4 EPs in a row.
Awesome. Okay. And that was the first one that just came out?
That was actually
Wind,
the
right?
second one.
The second one, okay.
The first one was Water, and I only did a little bit of like auxiliary recording on that one. And they brought me in to do more on the second one. I ended up producing it.
Cool.
And then I produced Fire, which is done. It's actually, the masters are sitting in my email box. I haven't listened to them yet, but the mixes were great. And so that one's done. And then Earth will be the last one, and I think we're slated to start that in December. So they're trying to release a 6-song EP every 6 months for 2 years.
Brilliant.
So it's been a blessing. I love those guys, and it's fun to work on, and it's nice to have a win. You know.
Yeah,
so,
that's a good one.
Yeah,
and just more respect and more. It's great.
Yeah.
And then I want people to know how to find the Penn Jones conspiracy stuff too.
Oh yeah,
because that stuff is badass.
Yeah, thanks. It's fun. Yeah, our what we call our Ameritronica band.
Ameritronica. Yes. I love that.
Man, yeah, we've got the website, PennJonesConspiracy.com. I'm assuming we update it once in a while.
And Penn is as in Pennsylvania, so Penn.
Yeah,
Jones.
Penn Jones Conspiracy. Cool. It's something to do with the Kennedy assassination. It's actually like
cool.
Penn Jones was a guy that wrote like a conspiracy theory about that back in the day.
I know nothing about that.
Me, honest to God, I don't know much about it either.
It's a great band name.
Yeah, and
it's a great band.
And the Instagram account, I think it's just Penn Jones Conspiracy, and that's where you're going to see most of our stuff. But the videos on YouTube are cool, and we're trying to get out and actually like play a handful of shows next year around town, and maybe regionally or whatever. But
yeah, it's awesome. I mean, it's this cross between. I mean, that's exactly what it is. But what's the lead singer's name? I forget.
Ben Olsen.
Yeah. He sounds kind of like a Soundgarden-y kind of like Seattle guy.
Yeah.
On top of this Americana electronica stuff.
It's
brilliant.
It's fun, and it basically is what happens when you get like 2 producers that play drums and love synthesizers together with a guy that writes songs, and pour a glass of bourbon every other week in the evening and just write whatever the hell you want.
That's awesome.
And so that's kind of the process. It's just like, what are we going to do tonight? I don't know. Let's do something in I don't know. I found this cool sound. That's all it is. It's fun.
Well, it comes across as incredibly authentic, and I love it. It's a great outlet for you, for sure, too.
Yeah.
To have that,
Yeah.
And then they can find you at Ben Jackson Music.
Yeah, benjacksonmusic.com. And then the Instagram is, I think, benjackson.music.
.music. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks for doing this,
Dude,
dude.
thanks for having me on.
We're
This
going
is
to
fun.
have to do this again at some point.
Yeah, for sure.
I think we have a few more things to talk about.
Endless.
We can have another cup of coffee and do another one right now.
Man, it's good.
Cheers, dude. Well, thank you again, and till the next time.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Watch this heavy heart of mine turn this water into wine. Light your match and let it glow, so I know my way home. One more game of tic-tac-toe. You be X and I'll be you. Fall in love like dominoes, then I'll come back home. If I can't find you, go get lost in the simple things. Might I remind you, chase your tail and dream those dreams. One more glass to set me free. Forget right past what's in front of me. I'll be fine, they tell me so, 'cause I know my way